my suggestion to you is stop trying to make it perfect and instead just get it out there. And then when you do that, then you can read and react. You can kind of react to what's happening and what you're seeing in the data that's coming back. Welcome to the Certified Badass Online Marketing Podcast, where being a badass has less to do with what you wear and what music you listen to, and everything to do with whether you've got the thriving online business of your dreams. I'm your renegade thinking Harvard Law grad turned online entrepreneur host, Bobby Klinck. In my years building my thriving business, the most important lesson I've learned is that being a badass online marketer isn't about secret strategies or ninja tactics. It's about doing the basic stuff right and showing the F up. So each week here on the show, you'll get clear, easy to execute guidance on how to build your online business and a swift kick in the ass or two to make sure you're getting it done. Hey there, welcome to episode 135 of the Certified Badass Online Marketing Podcast. I'm your host, Bobby Klinck, and I'm excited for today's show because I'm going to give you permission to stop doing some things. Because when I talk to online entrepreneurs, one of the things I find is that they are often overwhelmed by all the things. Sometimes it's technology, but for the most part, when I talk to people, what I hear them say is that they're just overwhelmed by all the different things that they feel like they have to be doing or need to be doing or should be doing. And I'm going to give you permission to stop doing a lot of that stuff today. Now, in this episode, we're going to talk about 5 things you should stop doing. And I got to be honest with you, like I can't give you like very specific things like that are going to apply to everybody on the level of saying, stop sending Pinterest or putting Pinterest pins at 4 p.m. on a Friday. I mean, I can't tell you that level of specificity, but I'm going to give you some guidelines to really help you to stop doing the stuff that doesn't matter so you can start doing the stuff that does matter and focus on the things that do matter in your business. Now, that's what we're going to be talking about today. But before we get to today's episode, I do want to talk to you about something that you need to be doing, because this week's episode is brought to you by my free list building bootcamp. Now, if you ask me what are the things that every entrepreneur needs to be doing, there are a few that I could list and I could come up with maybe a list of 5 to 10. But list building would be at the top of my list. And the reason is simple. The reality is that there have been gurus talking about, list build or about email marketing being dead for a long time, and they're just wrong. I mean, they are dead wrong because every time someone predicts an email killer, it has its 15 minutes of fame and then it goes down in the trash heap of history and email lives on. Maybe you heard experts a while back talking about how you need, to just focus 100% of your effort on your Facebook page. Because back in the day, there was no algorithm. So if you had people who liked your Facebook page, every single post you made, they would see. And so people are saying, ooh, that's where we should focus our attention. Don't worry about building your list. And then Facebook changed the algorithm. The same thing happened with Facebook Messenger bots. There was a big craze about Messenger bots the last couple of years. The problem is now Facebook has again changed the rules, making it basically, something where you have to pay if you want to send messages even to the people who have subscribed to your Messenger bot. So again, all of these different things go away, but email stands the test of time. And I know because last year I made all of my money basically by sending emails to my list and getting people to buy. So if you're ready to build your list, if you're not consistently adding hundreds of people to your list every single week, you need to focus on list building and double down. And so I've got my free list building bootcamp that'll help you do just that. You can get access by going to bobbyklinck.com/list building. Again, bobbyklinck.com/list building. It's a 5-part list building bootcamp that will really walk you through the process from soup to nuts. So without further ado, now let's dive in to the 5 things that I want you to stop doing. And these are things where I'm going to give you permission to stop doing them. First of all, I want you to stop chasing secrets or new technologies or newfangled ideas or ninja tactics or whatever these gurus are out there telling you. What I will tell you is that from my viewpoint, much of the overwhelm that I see entrepreneurs facing is because they're hearing this constant noise from these gurus who are constantly talking and preaching about some new technology tool or some new fancy launch tactic or some new whatever. Fill in the blank of what they're talking about. And this kind of relates to what I was talking about with the list building bootcamp. What happens is you hear all of that and you start to say, ooh, I got to try that. I got to try that. I got to try that. And then you've got 50 things on your list that have to be done this week, you feel like, because there are all of these newfangled things that you could be doing. Well, what I'm going to tell you is those newfangled technologies, the secret strategies, the ninja tactics, those are not the things that matter. And if you are at a state of being overwhelmed, those definitely aren't the things that matter. Now, I want to give you a little bit of background here. First of all, I want you to understand that there are a lot of different entrepreneurs, my peers in the space, who are teaching different things. But when you really get down to it, most of us are teaching similar things through different vehicles. For example, if you take a live video course, hopefully what you're really learning is how to create the right message using live video. If you take a course about building Facebook communities, hopefully what you're learning is to have the right message and the right approach using a Facebook community. You get the point. At the end of the day, what you need to be doing is focusing on finding your people, really understanding what their problems are, and then creating messages, creating content, creating freebies, creating all of that stuff that really solves that individual problem that people have. And newfangled tools aren't that. If you don't have your message dialed in, if you don't know what your people's problems are, you could have the most complicated segmentation technology in the world, and it ain't gonna matter because you're not gonna be able to talk in a way that's actually going to affect what people do. And you maybe have heard people talking about things like, new social media technologies. Like I've heard about TikTok and all of these other technologies that people are talking about. And what I will tell you is that if you look in the trash bin of online entrepreneurial history, there have been a lot of those tools that were going to be the next big thing. And what happens, I think, is you hear from people who end up being the success stories, right? So the person who was the pioneer, the people who were the pioneers on Instagram, for example, and succeeded at it are still around. And so you're like, oh man, if I would have just been one of those people. Or you have the same thought about Facebook, or maybe you have the same thought about YouTube or some other channel that's out there. You look at these people who started at the beginning and crushed it. But there's a bias that's going on there. And the bias that's going on there is, first of all, there were people who were pioneers on those channels who didn't succeed. So being a pioneer in and of itself isn't going to help you. But second, and just as important, you don't remember the people who were the pioneers on the programs, the software, the social media sites, whatever you want to call it, that failed because they're not here anymore. I kind of like to make this analogy. I was thinking about this recently. And when you chase kind of some ninja tactic or secret strategy, and if you're like going all in on that, it's kind of like taking your life savings into a casino and putting it all on red 32, basically one spin of the roulette wheel. Now, one out of, I don't know, I think there's 36 or 37 spots on a roulette wheel. So 1 out of 36 or 37 times, you're going to be rich. But the other 35 times, you're going to be broke. And the problem is, too many entrepreneurs are looking at the unicorns. They're looking at that one who happened to hit it big and ignoring all the people who failed trying to do the same strategies on something else. So that's why when you actually look at it and you look at the successful entrepreneurs, largely they're not people who are trying to be pioneers. Or if they are, it's after they've already established themselves somewhere else and they've got a team. And so they say, well, I can dabble. I can put a little bit of time and effort to be a pioneer over here on this thing. And if it works out, great. But I'm not going to bet my whole future, my whole business on it. And you as an entrepreneur, if you're just starting out, if you don't have a team, if you're still having to do a lot of the things, if you're suffering from overwhelm, you're not at a place where you have any business putting any effort into something that is a spin of the roulette wheel. You need to be investing your time, your energy, your effort, and your money into proven strategies that will work over and over and over again. Those are the boring things, and people don't like hearing it, but it's the things like creating great content every single week, sending an email or building your list and then sending an email to your list every single week, and being on the established social media platforms where your people are, but not, spending ungodly amounts of time there doing nothing. And just then creating offers and selling things that your people want. If you will focus on those things, you're going to be much better off than chasing any secret. And so that's why you hear me talk about this so much, and why I'm like, the whole title of this or name of this podcast, the Certified Badass Online Marketing Podcast, is cheeky, because to me, being a badass online marketer is about doing the bread and butter stuff right and not chasing the secrets. So what I'm going to tell you is let me back up. If you ever use the word or say things like I'm overwhelmed or feel that way or feel like there are too many things to do, the first thing you need to stop is stop doing anything that is a quote secret or ninja tactic or advanced thing. Don't do any of that. Because until you nail the basics, those things don't matter. And if you're overwhelmed, you don't have time to do the basics and the ninja tactics. So focus on the basics. Stop chasing secrets. That's my first thing to stop doing. Now, the second thing that I want you to stop doing right now is trying to be everywhere. And this is one where I have seen a lot of people, and I think what happens is you will see people who have this content repurposing strategy that is mind-boggling. They take one piece of content, so one blog post, one podcast, whatever their long-form content is, and then they will tell you, I create 37 different pieces of social media traffic and content from that. And I do, all of these posts. It goes onto YouTube. It goes onto Instagram and in these different ways. It goes into Instagram stories. It goes onto Facebook. It goes onto Pinterest. It goes onto LinkedIn. It goes onto Twitter. It goes onto God knows where else. And what I'm going to tell you is, first of all, I'm going to tell you this. I don't hear a lot of successful solopreneurs who don't have a team who are doing that, because doing that is going to take time. Now, yes, if you have a team who can simply do all of that repurposing for you, great. But until you got a team that can do all that repurposing for you, it all takes time. And what I will tell you is that the marginal value of repurposing it to all those places is next to none. You need to pick your spots. And this applies in everything you do. And it's kind of related to that stop chasing secrets, but here we're talking about a very specific thing. So with social media, you should pick one that is, one platform that is your primary platform. And I'll make a small exception if you're on Instagram and Facebook, because those are related and you can do a lot of the same things. But trying to worry about being on Instagram, on Facebook, on LinkedIn, on Twitter, on YouTube, on Pinterest, on TikTok, go down the list. If you're worrying about thinking, I need to be all of those places, what ends up happening is you don't do any of them well. And you would be much better served doing one really, really well. And what I'll tell you is I did not even start an Instagram account until I had a six-figure online business. I'm not sure if I was at multiple yet, but that year I was at multiple six figures. And so I want you to understand, before that, 100% of my effort on social media was on Facebook. That's the only place I played. It was the only thing I did. I focused on it, and I found the ways that I could use Facebook that worked for me. I've talked about my Facebook group strategy in the past, where I was in other people's Facebook groups and very focused even with that, and spent time there and provided value and just delivered and over-delivered value, which gave me a reputation, which then meant that people wanted to do business with me. Now, I couldn't have done that. I couldn't have focused in and become known as the legal guy in those communities if I had simultaneously been trying to be the legal guy on Instagram, the legal guy on Pinterest, the legal guy on Twitter, the legal guy on TikTok, which of course didn't even exist back then, but you get the point. If you're spending your time being everywhere, what ends up happening is you are kind of diffusing your energy, and so you never get the critical mass anywhere. So my most kind of, this is the piece I want to tell you. Stop trying to do that. Now, if you got the money and want to hire someone who will do all that repurposing for you, fine, but you need to focus on one. And there's this concept, my friend Emily Hirsch talked about it in one of her recent podcast episodes, the rule of one, and she applies it much more stringently than me. She says that until you have $1 million in revenue, you should have one product, one social media platform, one way you sell your product, meaning like a webinar or one other mechanism, and one form of content. She's saying you keep it very simple. And like I said, I don't go that extreme, but there's some real value in what she said. Like, until you're at least multiple six figures and have a team to help you, you should apply the rule of one. And so I think everyone here listening, if you feel overwhelmed, if you're not sure, what to do, and you feel like there's just too many things to do, the second thing, after you stop chasing secrets, the next thing you need to do is you need to stop trying to be everywhere. Pick your spots, focus your attention there, and be there. And that way you don't have to feel overwhelmed. You don't have to worry about it, et cetera. And again, it's going to be hard, because I'm going to tell you what's going to happen is, if you do this, if let's say you decide, I'm going to focus on Facebook, what's going to happen is you're going to have people come to you and say, oh man, you could be making a bunch of money on Pinterest. And they're going to try to sell you, oh, you really need to be on Pinterest, or oh, you really need to be here or there. And it might be that you could make money from Pinterest if you did Pinterest well. But in all of these categories, you have to do it well. You have to have a good strategy. You have to put in the time. You have to put in the effort. You have to put in the money. And so if you are not yet at a spot where realistically you have a team to help you do those things, trying to add this other area where you are potentially leaving money on the table counterintuitively will hurt your business, because it will take away from what you're doing elsewhere. So you're going to have to put on blinders and not listen to people. But I would tell you, stop trying to be everywhere. Stop feeling like you need to repurpose your content everywhere, and focus on one place. So that's the second thing. Now, the third thing, we're going to shift a little bit, but this is something that people need. You need to stop focusing or thinking that you need to make things perfect. This is one of the biggest sources of overwhelm. I hear from people, and they don't realize that this is what's happening. But if you constantly feel like everything you put out needs to be perfect, one of two things is going to happen. Either number one, you're not going to put anything out, or number two, you're going to put things out very, very slowly, or you're going to work yourself to the bone. Those are kind of the options here. And so you need to stop doing that. And what I will tell you is that people, it's funny, like my emails, which I'm kind of known for and which drive my business, I will periodically have someone write back and say, "Hey, I love your emails. I happen to be a copy editor, and I noticed you have some typos. Would you like me to review it?" Now, here's the truth. You know why I have typos in emails? It's not because those emails were ready a week before, and I didn't proof them. It's because I'm live writing them. It's because literally, I'm getting up and I'm saying, okay, it's Tuesday. I'm sending my weekly email and I'm going to write it. And people think this is nuts, but I share it and I admit it with people. If I have an email going out on Tuesday, chances are I don't write it till Monday or Tuesday. And this will drive some of my friends absolutely batty. They're going to go nuts at this concept. They're going to say, how can you survive doing that? How does that not drive you nuts? And I'm going to tell you, candidly, doing the opposite would drive me nuts. Trying to write, batch write emails for my weekly podcasts and those things would drive me nuts. I couldn't do it. My team keeps trying to get me to, and maybe I'll start getting maybe a week out. But I use this as an example that if I were someone who felt like every email had to be perfect, I would have to spend an extra hour to hour and a half every Tuesday. Every day I was going to send an email, like proofing the heck out of it, writing it in Google Sheets, making sure that there are no typos, reviewing it, and then put it into I could do that. But you know what? Removing a couple of typos probably isn't worth an hour and a half of my time. No, stop. Let me rephrase that. Fixing a couple of typos is not worth an hour and a half of my time, period. It's just not. Because people are going to be mad at me for having a couple of typos in an email. They're not my kind of people, and that's okay. But it is what it is. So that's an example, but I see it all the time. I will hear from people who spend half a day, futzing with editing something that doesn't need to be edited. Like you'll notice this podcast, one of the things I've told my podcast editors, and this is someone even people who are doing the work for me, I said, I don't want you going through and worrying about removing ums and doing things like that, because you know what? That doesn't affect the quality of the podcast. Let's just get the darn thing out. And that is a kind of a viewpoint you need to take. Now, I first heard this when my friend Amy Porterfield had Brooke Castillo on her show, and I think it's Brooke who talks about doing B- work, and that is hard for a lot of us entrepreneurs because a lot of us entrepreneurs were overachievers, and the concept of putting B- work is impossible. But we don't need A+ work. Things don't need to be perfect because I'm just going to tell you, things are never going to be perfect. You could spend all the time in the world and things won't be perfect. You'll put it out. And if you have that mindset that it needs to be perfect, you're still going to end up not happy with it and it'll ruin you. So stop making it perfect. Now, when I was right out of law school, my first year out of law school, I worked for a federal court of appeals judge, this really kind of distinguished judge. And at some point, there were three of us right out of law school working for him. And we did things like write opinion drafts that he would then, kind of take and make the final opinions on, et cetera. But so we would do that. And at one point he came in and I don't want to say he chastised us, but he felt like we were taking too long. And he said, look, it is a product we're putting out. It doesn't have to be perfect and it never will be perfect. That's something that has lived, that kind of has followed me, that mentality. And what I will tell you is in the online space, you need to adopt that because you need to put things out, see if they work. Because again, let's talk about a funnel. And this is a good example because as I'm recording this, we're spinning up a new funnel in my business as I'm recording this. And when you think about it, you create a funnel. So there's a freebie. And then in this case, there is a tripwire offer. So after people download the freebie, they're going to be given an offer to buy something for $7, a very low price thing. And then there's some other things that happen along the way. As I'm recording this, I have no idea whether that's going to work or not. I have no idea whether this is going to be, a good thing, a bad thing, how it's going to play out. And the thing is that if I spent weeks and weeks and weeks trying to make everything perfect, in other words, make the video on that Tripwire page perfect, make every single email that's going to go out in the sequence perfect, perfectly tailor every piece of copy on every page along the way. If I did that, I would spend a month on this thing before I had any idea whether it had any chance of being a useful thing to do. What I would rather do, and just to give you a sense of how it worked, I'm recording this on a Thursday. Last Friday, I talked to my integrator, Katie, about this, and I said, hey, I think I want to do this. She said, okay. She didn't want me to do it, but she didn't want us to do it now. She thought we could wait. I then spent the weekend, created all the pages over the weekend, and then on Monday, created the videos and wrote pretty much all the emails that were about 80% there. So over a 3-day period, I created essentially all of the assets. Now, there are a couple of last pieces that had to be done this week, but what I want you to get from this is that I basically did this stuff over 4 days so that now we're going to be ready to launch next week and start seeing what happens and start gathering data. And I want to start gathering that data because I may see that, oh, well, this isn't working. And then, okay, well, now I need to improve that. Now I can shoot a new video. I can tweak the copy on that page. I can tweak those email and what we're saying. But I need to get the data before I can really even start to make it go towards perfect. So what my suggestion to you is stop trying to make it perfect and instead just get it out there. And then when you do that, then you can read and react. You can kind of react to what's happening and what you're seeing in the data that's coming back. So that's what you need to do. Stop trying to be perfect, put stuff out there and get it done. Now, I want to make a subtle point here that is one of those things. Like, I don't know if you have never run Facebook ads, maybe you won't realize this, but if you have a video, if you do a Facebook Live and then you convert it to a Facebook ad, at that point, you cannot edit the video anymore. And so not just the video, even the caption and all of those things. And so this thing happened where I did that with an ad at some point. And I don't know, someone pointed out that there was a typo in it at some point. Well, just so you know, that ad has now been running for almost a year, is bringing in some of the cheapest leads I've ever gotten, and it's got a typo. Typos don't kill you. Just get it out there. Stop trying to make it perfect. So that's the third thing to do. Stop trying to make it perfect. Now, here's where I'm going to give you one. Actually, I'm going to give you a very concrete, tactical, strategic thing. And some people may hear this and say, wait, isn't this counter to what you talk about with the fans first method and your connection-based marketing? No, it's not. The fourth thing I want you to do, is I want you to stop being the first line of customer support in your business. What I would tell you is the first thing that you should try to find a way to outsource are customer support tickets. And I don't mean that you're not ever involved, but I don't think you should be the one doing the first line sorting, shuffling, and responding to most of it. I did this for way too long. I hired social media managers before I did this. I hired all these other people, and I'm kicking myself. And the reason why is very simple. First of all, customer support work, for the most part, let me break down a couple of reasons why it's a problem. Number one, a lot of it is routine work that is just silly. Like, I was literally the one forever who, if someone would email in because they were having trouble logging in to my Kartra backend, I was the one who would then, take the time to respond to the email, to go into Kartra, to resend their credentials, to explain that, sometimes it happens. It might be that they're, accidentally cutting, copying and pasting a space before the line, but I'm going to resend just to be safe, et cetera. And I would do all of those things. I would handle all of that. Well, that is not a task that is generating revenue or that is going to help. And so it is not a task I should be spending any time doing. And I was doing that. And me, being the one doing that doesn't in any way, shape, or form improve what happens. In fact, because I was doing it and because I was having to do that in the midst of everything else that I was doing in my business, it actually was meaning I was not doing it as well as someone else who maybe that's their only job, is when one of those things come in to respond to it. Because for those folks, it's very simple, and they're going to get a response out more quickly. They're going to do it better, et cetera. So that's the first level. On those routine kinds of customer support things, it's a waste of your time. The second reason you should stop doing it is, unless you happen to have the right kind of personality, you should not be doing customer support. And this is something that I found and that I didn't really discover until I had my team doing it, and I saw that the way they handled it was so different from the way I would handle it. See, because I am on the Myers-Briggs, I'm a thinker, not a feeler. I am an ENTJ. So I am a thinker, I am a judger, I am a straight to the, cut straight to the chase, get to it. And I don't necessarily tend to empathize kind of reflexively. And so that means that I am not a person who is going to be good at customer support, because my responses will often seem dry, seem not to have any sense of, relating to problems or any of those things. They're going to be, very much to the point, to the fact, et cetera. And I'm not talking about for those routine things, but I'm talking about where, for example, I get a customer support thing that maybe is a complaint. My tendency is going to be to kind of, and again, I don't do it, but it will seem almost like a metaphorical middle finger. And that's not a good way to go. And it's not that I'm being rude or being mean. I'm just cutting to the chase. And so what I realized when I hired my team, and they took kind of after they were on board, I had them take these Myers-Briggs tests, and I realized that they tended to be feelers, not thinkers. They tend to be perceivers, not judgers. And those personalities tend to do a better job with customer support, with community management, with all of those things, because they will almost reflexively be empathetic with the person. So again, that is a second reason why unless you happen to be an entrepreneur who has the right kind of personality, you're going to do worse at customer support than most of, than someone you could hire who actually would be good at it, enjoy it, etc. So that's another reason. Then the final reason that I want to give you to stop doing customer support is a little bit different. It's that, candidly, I don't think that it is good for us visionaries and us entrepreneurs who are running our businesses to see the negativity. And again, I'm not saying we just ignore problems. That is not what I'm suggesting. But I'll just tell you, so we have set up rules so that in my inbox, if someone, sends in something wanting to cancel a membership, it gets forwarded on to support, and I never even see it, and then it gets moved out of my inbox. Because I'll just tell you, even though I have a membership and I know people are going to cancel, right? It's going to happen. It's the nature of the beast. Even a good membership, you're going to have churn. But every time I would get one of those emails, it would kind of give me a sinking feeling. It would make me feel bad. And I'm betting you're probably the same, because even though it's the reality and there's nothing wrong with it, it made me feel like I wasn't serving my community. I wasn't doing a good enough job. And you and I don't need to have that kind of feeling. We don't need that negativity. We don't need to, spend our, mental bandwidth on that. And so it's not just cancellations, it's complaints. It's all of those kind of, if you get negativity, those things, I think for most of us, will tend to be counterproductive. So that's why, and it's not just customer support emails here. I've heard oftentimes that people who run webinars and have a team, their team, part of what the team is doing is making sure that the person doesn't see the trolls who are in there saying bad things, because there's no reason for you to be seeing that stuff. So that's kind of the final reason. Now, so those are kind of three reasons why I want you to stop being the first line on customer support. It should be the first thing you should outsource when you start outsourcing. Now, I want to be clear. I am in no way saying that you don't monitor, that you don't get updates from your team, that you don't see it. There will be times where things will need to be escalated to you because you are the head, you have to make the decisions. And there will be times when there are positive things that your team should be instructed to send to you. And there will be times that you decide to dive in and answer some customer support, and that's okay. But you shouldn't be doing it on a day-to-day basis, because it's not good for you and it's not good for your customers. So stop responding to customer support. Find someone to do that for you. So that's the one that I'm going to give you that is really kind of the one very tactical, concrete thing. The next thing I'm going to tell you, and it kind of sums up some of the other things, but the fifth thing you need to stop doing is comparing yourself to other people. And you might say, oh, no, I don't do that. But you probably do. And comparison is the reason why so many people feel overwhelmed, because they say, well, but that person already has it all figured out. Oh, but that person is making that much money. Oh, but that person is doing it that way, so maybe I should do it that way. Oh, but that person, there's all of that happening. And there's a lot of different levels of it. And it's funny, it is so pervasive that people don't even realize it's happening. So I was in an event last year where the person hosting the event got everyone in advance to basically say, we're not comparing ourselves to others. We're not going to do that. And everyone's, oh yeah, we're not going to do that. We're not going to do that. But periodically then she would have people get up, go to the mic and talk about, like what their vision was, what their goal was. And I couldn't help but laugh. And I think I was the only one who picked up on this because I talked to a bunch of people and they didn't even notice it. These people got up, and when they were talking about what their big goal was, it was almost always stated in one of two ways. I want to be the number one, or I want to be the world's leading, and then fill in whatever they want to do. So these people, even though we'd had an agreement from the beginning that we weren't going to compare, they were judging their success and stating their goals by comparing themselves to others, by putting themselves on a curve and saying, I want to be in the 99th percentile. So that's why I'm saying this is pervasive. And so there's part of that you need to stop that kind of thinking of comparing, like I'm only successful if I'm making as much money as blank, or I have as many customers as blank, or whatever. So that's one part of it. But the other part, and this is where I think it's happening a lot more, is you are comparing yourself on little things. Like maybe you look at your quote competitors on Instagram and say, oh, but they've got 5 times as many followers as me. Or, ooh, they get a lot more engagement than me. Or, ooh, that person has a lot more followers on Facebook than me. Or, ooh, that person's been on a lot more podcasts than me. We do all of that. And that then leads to the overwhelm. It leads to the overwhelm because what happens is, like, again, depending on what you do, you theoretically have competitors. I don't even like the word competitors, but you have people offering the same or similar services to you. Like you've got 50 of them at least. I mean, there's probably more than that. And guess what? Every single one of them has a different strategy that they've used to get where they are. And if you start comparing yourself, even to just say 10 of them, you're like, ooh, well, that person is really active on Instagram, so I need to be active on Instagram. Ooh, this person has a big Facebook group. I need to create a Facebook group. Ooh, that person is on Twitter and doing good things on Twitter. I need to be over on Twitter. Now, that's probably not true because I don't think a lot of people are doing Twitter, but you get the point. And then you're like, ooh, and that person has an online course, so I need to create an online course. Oh, that person's selling templates. Maybe I should create templates. Ooh, this person has a membership. I should do a membership. Oh, they're doing group coaching. I got to create a group coaching program. Ooh, they have a podcast. I have to have a podcast. Oh, that one's got a blog and it's doing a ton of work, so I've got to have a blog. Ooh, this person's got a YouTube channel. Got to do that. You get the point. I can go on and on and on. And I believe that if you are honest with yourself and you're someone who is saying you're overwhelmed, this is part of it. And some of it is you're comparing yourself to your competitors. Some of it is you're comparing yourself to peers who are other online entrepreneurs who maybe aren't even doing the same thing as you, who don't have similar offers, but you're in the same space, you're in the same circles. So you see what they're doing and you feel like, ooh, I need to be thinking about that. I'll be honest with you, I feel envy when I hear people talking about launches. Now, I don't do launches, and I'm not planning to change that anytime soon. But in my mastermind, people will talk about these things, and we start talking about EPL, which is earnings per lead, and cost per lead, and these conversion rates, and all of these things. I'm like, ooh, this just sounds fun. I want to do it. But I don't, because I stay in my lane. I don't compare myself to them. I don't let myself feel like I need to be doing those things. Now, they can provide insights for me. They can provide, help. I can learn by listening, but I am not going to feel like I need to compare my business to them. Because the reality is they could have the same kind of jealousy about the fact that, I bring new people into my membership every single week or every single month with my workshops. Or they maybe are going to be jealous that I never have to shell out $50,000 in a month in Facebook ads like some big name entrepreneurs do, or not even big name, but some entrepreneurs do during a launch. Because they're focused on, I've got to get this many leads into my launch, and that's going to cost me X, and I got to spend all that money, and I'm not going to know until I do my first webinar whether it's going to succeed, and they start, getting nervous. So they might be looking over at me and saying, man, I wish I had a business like Bobby's where I wouldn't have to deal with that. Or maybe they're like, I'm sure there are a lot of people who are jealous about my legal templates because it's like, he's got these templates that just sell every single month, brings in multiple 5 figures without him really having to do anything. I don't know about you, but that's something a lot of people would like. Did I say multiple 6 figures? If I did, I meant multiple 5 figures each month. But you get the point. People can be looking at my business and being jealous of me. And then they might, even though they've adopted a launch mentality, then they feel like they've got to create some kind of evergreen template type of thing. And it wouldn't be legal templates, but something that they can sell at a lower dollar. And then they feel like they need to do that. And it becomes something else that distracts them from their launch. So it happens at every single level. And what I would tell you is that when you stop doing that, when you stop comparing yourself to anyone, now, I don't mean you stop learning, but you stop comparing yourself and judging your success based on comparing what you're doing to what other people are doing. That is kind of the final thing that all of us need to stop doing. If you'll stop doing that, you will be much happier. You will also be much more successful, because what I'll tell you is when you do that, a lot of these other things are going to fall into line. So that's the final thing I want you to stop doing. I want you to stop comparing yourself to other entrepreneurs and judging your success by any measure of comparison, because that is a huge differentiator, and that's something that will never lead to anything good, and you're going to struggle with it, but I tell you to do it. So those are the 5 things to stop doing. Stop chasing secrets. Stop trying to be everywhere. Stop thinking and trying to make things perfect. Stop responding to customer support yourself. Again, that's the only really tactical one. And then stop comparing yourself to others. If you will stop doing those 5 things, I candidly believe the overwhelm will pass, because I'm giving you permission to focus on the basics, to focus on one social media platform, to be okay with getting things to good enough and putting them out, to let other people deal with things like customer support, and to not worry what other people are doing. And if you take those pieces of advice, you're going to stop feeling this sense of overwhelm. So those are the big lessons. Again, one of the things that this is not a comparison, this is not a secret, this is one of those basics you need to be doing is list building. If you are not growing your list consistently each and every week, if you are not adding at least hundreds of people to your list every single week, you need to double down on list building. You need to be working on that, because building that list is going to be important. If you want, I would love to have you grab access to my list building bootcamp, where I walk through all of it, kind of 5 different things. And it's, talks at the first level about mapping the customer journey, which is hugely important. And then creating the great freebie, creating the opt-in page, creating the first email that goes out, and then how to get traffic to your page. So we walk through all of those things in the boot camp. I'd love for you to grab your spot. You can get access by going to Bobby Klinck, bobbyklink.com/list building. Again, bobbyklink.com/list building. So that's it. And now it's your turn to go out and be a badass. Talk to you later. That's it for this episode of the Certified Badass Online Marketing Podcast. Make sure to tune in next time. And in the meantime, go out and build the badass business of your dreams.